is Jenny, and I'm a wife and mom raising 2 kids. But I used to live a more glamorous life as a TV reporter. I was on the nightly news interviewing pop stars and politicians. So when I said goodbye to TV and hello to motherhood, I suddenly discovered what we moms are up against. We live in a world that tells us to be rich and famous, thin and successful. You know, almost nobody says,
oh hey, you're a mom? That's fabulous. But you are fabulous, and I'm here to tell you why.
It's the Channelmom Show, celebrating you with Jenny Dean Schmidt.
Welcome back to the Channelmom Show. We are here on Mile High Sports, AM 1510, FM 93.7, and we have a wonderful guest coming up. I just want you to know, though, that we are here to celebrate you, Mom. So if you are feeling uncelebrated throughout the week, the Channelmom Show is here to celebrate you and help you and encourage you and give you great advice for your mothering and some kind of fun things, too, that you can takeaways for your life. You can also watch us on channelmom.com because we tape the show. And, in fact, this next segment, we're going to be busy taping because Julie has all kinds of wonderful things here to show us. So please feel free to watch us at channelmom.com or get a hold of us via Facebook. That's facebook.com/channelmom, and just ask questions and tell us what's on your mind and tell us what kind of things you'd like to see on the show and guests and so on that you want to request. We would love to hear from you. Finally, I just want to give out the phone number again because Julie, I think you're going to want to ask her some questions. She's an expert and she knows what she's doing, and she's got some unique ideas that I think, you know, women are always looking for unique ideas when it comes to weight and to fitness. So please call 303-297-1510. I know we had a caller earlier in the hour who was going to call back, so we hope we hear from her. All righty. Welcome, Julie Hammerstein, the author of Fat is Not a Four-Letter Word. I know you're a certified nutritionist. You speak about these things, and you are an author of the book. We are just thrilled to have you here. And you do have a very special thing to share with moms today. But I want moms to understand you because you do have a kind of a neat story that makes moms, frankly, not hate you. Truly, because you're a slender, fit person, but you have had a struggle. So why don't you tell moms where you come from, what you went through, and why you look like you do today?
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here again. Thank you. I wasn't always healthy. And, I look at that as being kind of a gift in some ways because now I get to do this and speak to it authentically. But I grew up overweight and struggled with my weight since I was a child and really found food to be the way that I, found peace and solace. And whatever kids go through, they're always looking for something to kind of, support them. And for me, it was food. It was the sleeve of Oreo cookies and the Doritos and all that stuff. So I went on my first diet when I was, a young child, and it was Weight Watchers. And I cycled through diets from the time I was in college. And really, in my mind, I believed that I was just programmed to be fat and that my life was going to be this cycling. Whenever I would lose the weight, there was always that fear that, well, what if I gain it back? And now I have to deprive myself. And I had a hard time finding the balance until my habits started making me sick. Literally, I was getting diagnosed with conditions that I knew I shouldn't be having at that young age in my 20s.
Can you share any?
Yeah, thyroid conditions. And I was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, which I knew was going to present problems later in terms of fertility and weight and all those things. So, and just depression, I knew I was a smoker and drinking too much and all those things. So it was a moment when I looked in the mirror one day, literally, and was just like, wow, this is not the picture that I want, and this is not the life that I want, so time to do something about it. And I think we all have those pivotal moments, and some of us take action, and some of us keep cycling through those patterns. But I started running, and it changed my life in so many ways, and then I took this on as a lifelong mission to really empower people around what's that aha moment that you're going to act on.
You started running, and I have a number of friends. I mean, I think every woman, I think I'm sort of naturally on the slender side because I come from a family that is.
Right.
But every woman struggles. I've been 15, pounds heavier than theirs, or 20 pounds, and that doesn't seem like a lot to some people, but it bugged me.
Yeah.
I wonder, women who are truly overweight, how did you start running when you felt like you were truly overweight? Were you embarrassed? Was it difficult? I mean, what got you to that place where you thought, I'm just going to go out and do it? Because you had that aha moment in the mirror. What changed? And I think you have an attitude
thing that you want to give advice about. So tell me about that.
Yeah. It was really just the idea that no one else was going to do it for me. But really, I was so sick and tired of dieting and so sick and tired of the negative self-talk. And you just get to that point, or I got to that point, where I couldn't afford to do that anymore. And so I just said, I'm going to start running because I saw other people being healthy running. And that was the thing that appealed to me. So that's kind of what resonated to me. But I looked in my closet and really I didn't have even a pair of running shoes. I had a pair of high tops but I put them on and I went out and I ran 8 blocks.
Okay.
And that was it. And I came back and I was like, I can totally do that. I can commit to that.
Yeah.
And so the next day, 8 blocks. The next day, 8 blocks. And it just built from there and I started to feel more fitness and had something inside me that kept saying, okay, well, once you get good at that, that's not good enough. And ultimately, it led to 6 miles by the end of the year. I lost the weight. I was about 50 pounds overweight, and I started losing the weight without dieting.
Just running.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I was still drinking the Diet Cokes because I didn't have a lot of information or knowledge about the right way to eat.
Yes.
I was in college, right?
Yes.
So I probably wouldn't have embraced it anyway.
Yeah.
But the running I could do.
Yeah.
And I lost the weight and I started drinking water and that was the catalyst for change for other things. Quit smoking, got good grades. I mean,
Wow.
all these other things started to shape around this one small change that I decided to commit
They
to.
do. And weight, it's such a strange thing, but we are so tied to our physical bodies. And
Yeah.
it really does impact the rest of our lives. In fact, there was this news story I was going to read, and we can chat about it just briefly, about this poor boy. And it's also going to be my pitch for a new segment that we're going to do here on Channel Mom. A sweet boy named Ben Barnhart, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He lived in Washington State. He had a weight problem. He was,
Yeah.
I believe, 100 pounds overweight or more.
Mm.
He'd been struggling with it. He was also a child who was struggling with autism issues and a number of things that put him in special ed situations.
Right.
He had just lost 100 pounds, but they said that for years he'd been struggling with it. Kids had been teasing him about his obesity. He had locked himself in his room and sought solace just by being alone and being with his little black cat, they said.
Yeah.
He had so many problems with the school system, and the mother was so distraught. She was a psychiatrist, so distraught with her son's problems and that the school system wouldn't pay for him to go to private school and that she didn't know what to do anymore, and she was overwhelmed by debt. And probably overwhelmed by her son's problems.
Yeah.
And who knows what problems were tied to his weight issues, honestly. Let's
Right.
just be honest about that. So, and I'm sorry about this brutal fact here on the Mom Show. I know it's not exactly G-rated, but I want mothers to understand what goes on with this pain, and I'm sure they do. And that's why I'm going to say it. She did shoot her, she killed her son.
Right.
And then she killed herself. And this just happened the other day. So, brutal story. But I got to believe a little bit of his weight issues were tied into the whole story. That he was a struggling, suffering child, so that either manifested itself in the weight issue or the weight issue manifested itself in some of these other problems. Not that being overweight would cause autism, but you know what I mean.
Right.
And so I looked at that story and I thought, wow, I wonder how Julie will feel about this because she was a child who suffered with these things.
Mm-hmm.
But you're already saying that all these, all the problems we have sometimes are linked together, and some of them are linked to weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
It changes our. You almost wonder if he was a little more timid in school because of his obesity issues.
Right.
Right?
Right. And, I wasn't the 100-pound overweight kid, and I'll tell you, I had to read that story like 30 times last night just so I could be somewhat immune to it to be able to talk about it because it's just so sad.
It is sad. It is sad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that it is hard to say what, the cart before the horse, what really happens, but this is where I'm such an advocate for family health because
Right.
our children get messages. They don't just come into the world with this idea about who they are. I mean, we do essentially, but then our environments and the language that our environments were exposed to start to shape who we believe ourselves to be.
Right.
And so with a mom who's also struggling and trying to do her best and probably not feeling so good about herself, there was probably this kind of relationship that was feeding it off itself and feeding off each other. And so hard to know if the weight caused some of the autism or vice versa. But
or any of his problems. Any
of his problems. But what that comes down to, though, to me, is just really what it gets down to the very core of self-love. Yeah. And what do you believe about yourself? And in my book, I have people go through, before I even start talking about food and diet, I have people identify what are those those feature attractions. You know, what are the things that if you were to go write a play or a movie about yourself and you had to go speak it to the world, what kind of words, what language would you use to describe yourself?
Right.
And what are those great things that you love about yourself? And someone just need to sit down with that kid and say, hey, you know, you're a bright shining star. Let's figure out some ways to tap into that.
Yeah.
But someone didn't have the resources. He didn't have the resources. And so he goes within, and it's just.
And his mom evidently didn't have the resources because she was feeling so bad.
Right.
It just breaks your heart. I don't know if we're getting a call, but it looks like there's a light lighting up. So hopefully we'll have a call for you. I do ache about that story. And I'm going to, in the next segment, I'm going to tell moms out there this new feature that we have going to try to help mothers like that. No judgment of her. It sounds like she was in a great deal of pain. We are going to take a call for you, and I am going to get to your beautiful array of snacks here because you have a really cool tip for moms, and I promised the tip would happen, and we will either get to it at the end of this segment or the next. But right now, I believe we have Lydia on the line to ask you a call.
Excellent.
A question.
Hi, Lydia.
Hi. Yes, I do not have an overweight child, but I'm curious if you can give me some tips of just the language to use because, I want to promote health in my home, but I also don't want to talk about dieting. I don't want to talk about myself being overweight because I don't want to pass that on to my daughter. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that because I know that that's something I hear a lot of moms talking about their own weight and, maybe not realizing that that's that their little girls can pick that up and even if they're not overweight, maybe use that against another child at school. So I'm curious if you have any tips on how to address that.
Oh, absolutely. Great question. Really fabulous.
That is a great question, and I think you're right on with that. As moms and women, we grew up also getting those messages, and so it's sometimes we don't even know that we're saying it or that we're walking by the mirror and looking at our stomachs with our daughters sitting there watching us, or our sons. I have little boys that I work with too that deal with body image issues. Or that, or saying kind of casually to your husband, I shouldn't be eating this, I'm getting so fat, or this is so bad for me. And our kids hear that. And so to really just check yourself in terms of what's your own relationship to food, what are you kind of dealing with on your own so that you can get some better tools just to speak to yourself.
Yeah.
And then you're going to start using that language with your kids. But to really
what's the language you use with them? It's not dieting.
It isn't. And it's really more about health, about vitality, and really finding out what are your kids passionate about. Because really what creates change is this big thing out here that we want in our life. And for us, it's health or to live a long life or to be successful. For kids, it's like fitting in, doing well in school, doing great on the lacrosse team, right? That kind of thing. And so if we can talk about food as being fuel, or that it really is going to, help us to feel good about ourselves in terms of our energy and the way that we think, those kinds of things. Food is fuel. Food as it can be fun, but to really know that to talk about food is not as reward, but hey, let's go get some ice cream because we're going to go get ice cream. Not because you did great on a test or you did great in sports or you've had a rough day, but more starting to choose it just for what it is, that it's fun, it's celebration, it tastes good, but not to attach all this meaning.
Right, that's right. And I try to use words like fit instead of skinny.
Yes.
Like, let's be fit, and you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
Because even at 8, my daughter's already talking about her thighs and things like that. And I think,
Well, and the whole, like, what they see in terms of what you're saying to people. Like, if you're the family that kind of laughs at the fat person in the restaurant across the way, that sends a message because that little girl is thinking, oh my gosh, I hope I never get there.
Yeah.
Because look what people say about those people.
And then they obsess about it. And then, frankly, that can backfire because then they start to diet at a young age and then they ruin their metabolism and they really can struggle.
Right.
I think. Now, I want everybody to know that we have to go, for this segment. We're going to be right back. But Julie has this fabulous array of things that if you go to channelmom.com, you can see all of the things she has laid out here. I'm not going to tell you about them, but she has this wonderful thing that she really believes in is going to help moms and kids and people like Lydia to feed their children well in a very practical and easy way. Because I think we all stress about how can we constantly give them wonderful salads and lean meats and so on. So you've got great tips. So we're going to talk about those coming up.
Excellent.
And so we will be back with Julie Hammerstein, the author of Fat is Not a 4-Letter Word. We just love her. We're going to have her continually so moms can get advice from her.
We hope you'll join us, and we have a couple other features we want to share with you, a Channel Mom tip. So please come back.